Hi, I am Daniel. Today I kissed the boy I never got over. The problem is, he was sitting across from me in a job interview. I never thought I would see Sam again after 11 years. Yeah, things were a little awkward after we kissed earlier that day. But the interview still happened afterward. And obviously Sam got the job. Not because of me. The final decision was not mine alone. 2 other directors reviewed his portfolio and interview notes before the offer was made. He earned it completely on his own. Honestly, he was so good that even I was surprised. I never expected the reckless boy I used to share a room with to grow into someone this talented. Somehow, less than an hour later, I was walking through downtown Seattle beside the boy I had spent 11 years trying to forget. Seattle was raining again by the time we left the office building. Not heavy rain. Just the quiet kind that covered the streets in reflections and made the city feel softer than it really was. Sam walked beside me with his hands in his coat pockets while cars hissed past us on the wet pavement. For a while, neither of us spoke. It should have felt awkward. Instead, it felt familiar, like we had simply paused a conversation 11 years ago and somehow ended up back inside it. "You still hate umbrellas?" Sam finally asked while we waited for the crosswalk light to change. I glanced at him. "They're inconvenient." Sam laughed softly beside me. "You said they were portable trust issues." I looked away before he could see the smile trying to happen. Then I glanced at him again. "You remember that?" Sam kept walking beside me, his smile small but obvious. "You said a lot of weird things at 17. "So did you," I said. Sam laughed softly. "Yeah, but mine were charming." The sound of his laugh hit me harder than it should have. 11 years. 11 years and my body still reacted to him before my mind could catch up. We ended up in a small Italian restaurant 3 blocks away from the office. Warm lights, old wood tables, the smell of garlic and fresh bread hanging in the air. Felt too intimate immediately. Sam noticed it too. "Wow," Sam said while sliding into the booth across. "For me, this definitely feels like a date." I nearly choked on my water. Sam leaned back against the seat with a smug grin. "Relax, Daniel. I am joking." I set my glass down carefully. "That is usually how disasters start." Sam smiled lazily across the table. "Still dramatic. Good to know." The waitress came by, and somehow Sam still remembered my order before I said it. "Fettuccine Alfredo," he told her casually. "No mushrooms." Then he looked at me. "You still hate mushrooms, right?" I looked up in surprise. "You remember that too?" Sam pointed lightly toward my plate. "You used to pick them out like they personally offended you." I looked at the menu again, trying not to smile. "They do personally offend me." Sam laughed again. God, I had missed that sound. Dinner started easy after that. Too easy. We talked about old teachers. High school football games Sam never actually cared about. The tiny coffee shop near campus that used to burn everything they served. "Mrs. Reynolds still teaches English," Sam said while tearing apart a breadstick. "She asked about you once." I looked up from my plate. "Seriously?" I asked. Sam nodded. "Yeah," he said. "She said you were the only student who actually liked reading the assignments." "I did like them," I said. "I know," Sam replied. "You terrified the rest of us." I leaned back slightly. "That sounds like a you problem." Sam leaned back in his seat, smiling at me in that same warm way I remembered from years ago. It should not have been possible for someone to look exactly like a memory and completely different at the same time. But somehow Sam did. Older now, broader shoulders, softer around the eyes, less reckless. Still Sam. At one point, the conversation drifted toward his parents. "How are they?" I asked quietly. Sam's expression softened immediately. Sam smiled down at his glass. "Good. Mom still cries during every holiday movie ever made." I nodded, remembering her immediately. "That sounds accurate." Sam's smile widened a little. "And Dad retired last year." I raised an eyebrow. "That man worked through the flu twice." "He still complains about retirement every single day," Sam said. I smiled into my glass. For a second, I could almost see their old kitchen again. The magnets on the fridge. Sam stealing food while his mother pretended not to notice. The warmth of that house during the coldest year of my life. They ask about you all the time, Sam said gently. Something in my chest tightened. Yeah. Sam nodded, his voice softer now. I think they would be really happy to hear I saw you again. I looked down at the table. I didn't trust myself to answer immediately, because hearing that hurt in a quieter way than I expected. For years, I had convinced myself I was just a temporary part of their lives. A sad memory from high school everyone eventually moved past. But apparently they hadn't. Neither had Sam. The waitress brought our food, saving me from saying something dangerous. For a while, we focused on eating instead. Or pretending to. I noticed Sam still pushed tomatoes to the side of his plate. He noticed I still organized my silverware too neatly. Sam glanced down at my silverware. You are still doing that, he said. I looked up. Doing what? Sam nodded toward my plate. That weird thing with the fork. I looked down. My fork and knife were perfectly aligned beside the plate. I do not know what you mean, I said. Sam gave me a flat look. Daniel. I sighed. Fine. Maybe I like symmetry. You need therapy, Sam said. I manage a company branch. That is basically the same thing. Sam laughed so suddenly he almost dropped his fork. And there it was again. That feeling. Like I was 17 for half a second. Like maybe losing him had never fully stopped happening. By the time dinner ended, the rain outside had slowed into a mist. We stepped outside together, neither of us seeming eager to say goodnight yet. So, I said carefully, did you already find a place in Seattle? Sam rubbed the back of his neck. Not yet. I looked at him more carefully. You are still at the hotel? Sam gave me a tired little smile. Yeah. Temporary suffering builds character. That sounds expensive, I said. It is expensive, Sam admitted. I hesitated. This was a terrible idea. An unbelievably terrible idea. Which was probably why I heard myself say it anyway. You could stay at my apartment for a while. Sam blinked at me in surprise. What? I have 3 bedrooms, I said quickly. You would have your own room. Sam stared at me long enough that I started regretting the sentence immediately. Then he smiled. Not the teasing smile. Not the easy social one he gave everyone else. This one was quieter. Careful. Daniel, he said softly. Are you sure that's a good idea? No, absolutely not. But I looked at him anyway and answered, Last time, you shared your place with me. The city lights reflected gold against the wet streets around us. I swallowed once before finishing quietly. Now it is my turn. The drive to Sam's hotel felt strangely quiet after that. Not uncomfortable, just careful. Sam sat in the passenger seat with one arm resting near the window while Seattle lights blurred across the glass beside him. Every now and then, I caught him looking at me like he still could not believe this was happening. Honestly, neither could I. You know, Sam said after a while. Most people usually wait at least a few dates before inviting someone home. I kept my eyes on the road. This is not a date, I said. Sam turned his face toward the window, but I could still see his smile in the reflection. Right, he said. And we definitely did not kiss in your office 6 hours ago. My grip tightened slightly on the steering wheel. Sam noticed. Of course he noticed. Relax, Sam said softly, smiling to himself. I am trying to make this less awkward. I kept my eyes on the road. You are failing. Sam gave a quiet laugh. That sounds personal. It is, I said. The sound settled warmly inside the car, and for one dangerous second, everything felt too easy again. When I pulled up outside his hotel, the rain had turned into a thin silver mist. Sam unbuckled his seatbelt, opened the door, and stepped out. I stayed behind the wheel. He closed the door, then stood on the curb beneath the hotel awning, looking at me through the passenger side window. I lowered the window slightly. What are you waiting for? I asked. Sam leaned down with a smile that was far too innocent to be trusted. I am waiting for you to come in with me. I stared at him. Me? I said. Into your hotel? Sam's smile widened immediately. Daniel. What? He tilted his head, clearly enjoying this. What exactly do you think is going to happen in there? I looked straight ahead through the windshield. Nothing. Sure, Sam said, clearly enjoying himself. I just meant you could help me carry my luggage. There is a lot of it. I turned my head slowly. You need help carrying luggage. Yes. That is all. That is all, Sam said, then paused. Unless you are emotionally attached to staying in the car and looking mysterious. I turned off the engine. I hate you. Sam laughed softly. No, you do not. Unfortunately, he was right. The hotel room was small, temporary, and aggressively beige. Sam had not exaggerated about the luggage. There was one duffel bag, one suitcase, a laptop bag, and a half-open garment bag hanging over the back of a chair. I looked at the pile. You moved to Seattle with an entire emergency wardrobe? Sam zipped the suitcase shut. I like being prepared. For what? A formal evacuation. For life, he said, tossing me the duffel bag. I caught it automatically. For a second, both of us froze. Then Sam smiled like he remembered another lifetime when we had shared one tiny room and passed each other clothes, books, blankets, and silence because there had been nowhere else to put them. I looked away first. Are you done? I asked. Almost. A few minutes later, we were back in the car with his luggage in the trunk and his laptop bag at his feet. The drive back to my apartment felt quieter than before. Not because there was nothing to say, because there was too much. I parked in the underground garage beneath my apartment building about 15 minutes later. Sam stepped out beside me and slowly looked up at the building. Wow, Sam said, staring toward the lobby entrance. This is already nicer than the room we used to share. That room was tiny. Yeah, Sam laughed softly. And somehow we still survived an entire year in it. The elevator ride upstairs was somehow worse. Too small, too quiet, too aware. Every time our shoulders almost brushed, my brain stopped functioning correctly for half a second. It was ridiculous. We were 28 years old, not 17. But apparently my body had not received that update yet. When the apartment door opened, Sam stepped inside first and immediately froze. The living room windows overlooked downtown Seattle, glowing gold against the rain-dark streets below. The kitchen sat off to the side with dark countertops and soft under-cabinet lighting. Everything was neat, organized, very me. Sam slowly turned in a circle. Daniel, he said carefully, how much do they pay you here? Enough, I said. Sam gestured toward the windows like the view had personally offended him. This place has 3 bedrooms and a view. It also has a mortgage, I reminded him. Sam dropped his duffel bag and suitcase beside the couch, still looking around like the apartment had personally challenged him. I think your definition of suffering and mine are very different. I took off my coat and hung it by the door. I nodded toward the hallway. You can use the guest room at the end of the hall. Sam looked toward it, then back at me. You really were serious. I frowned slightly. Why would I not be? I do not know. His voice softened a little. Because 11 years ago we were sharing a tiny room and now you manage an entire company branch. I do not manage the entire company. Still terrifying. I'm not terrifying, I said. Sam stared at me for 2 seconds too long. Then he smiled like he had decided not to argue. Sure. I ignored that. Mostly because he was unfortunately right. For a while, I showed him around the apartment, the guest room, the kitchen, the laundry closet that somehow still annoyed me every time I opened it. Sam followed behind me quietly, taking everything in. Then he stopped near the bookshelf in the living room. Sam's voice became quieter. You kept this. I looked over. He was holding an old framed photograph. The Whitakers, me, Sam. Thanksgiving when we were 17. I had forgotten it was even there. Or maybe I had stopped noticing it because taking it down felt worse. Sam stared at the photo for a moment before looking at me carefully. You really kept it all this time? I crossed my arms loosely. It was a good picture. Sam looked like he wanted to say something else. Instead, he just nodded slowly and placed it back exactly where he found it. That somehow hurt more. Later that night, Sam ordered takeout because apparently my refrigerator contained nothing except sparkling water and emotional repression. That is not true, I argued from the kitchen. Sam opened the refrigerator and looked inside. You have eggs. I can cook, I said from the kitchen. He glanced toward my cabinets. You own one pan. I own several pans. Sam pointed toward the stove. One emotional support pan does not count. I should not have laughed, but I did. And the look on Sam's face afterward nearly ruined me, because he looked relieved, like hearing me laugh mattered more than it should have. We ate dinner on the couch while some random cooking competition played quietly on television. At some point, Sam kicked off his shoes and stretched out comfortably against the cushions like he had already lived there for years. It should have bothered me. Instead, I kept catching myself glancing over just to make sure he was still there. So, Sam said eventually, balancing a takeout container on his knee. What is the official roommate policy here? You are not technically my roommate, I said. Sam lifted one eyebrow. Oh, I pointed vaguely toward the hallway. You have your own room, I said. Sam nodded thoughtfully. So we are just two emotionally confused men accidentally living together, he said. I would not describe myself as emotionally confused. Sam gave me a long look. Daniel. Fine, I muttered, moderately confused. There he is. I shook my head, staring down at my food to hide another smile. The truth was, I had spent years building a life that felt stable, predictable, controlled. Then Sam walked back into it 12 hours ago, and suddenly my apartment already felt different. Warmer somehow, louder, alive in places I had forgotten existed. Around midnight, Sam finally stood and pulled his luggage toward the hallway. I should probably sleep before my first day tomorrow. Probably. He hesitated near the hallway. Then he looked back at me. Hey, Daniel. Yeah, that softer expression appeared again. The dangerous one. The one that reminded me too much of 17. Thank you, he said quietly, for letting me stay. My chest tightened unexpectedly. I looked away before answering. It is only temporary, I said quietly. Sam smiled like he already knew I was lying. Sure, he said softly. Temporary. Then he disappeared down the hallway. A few minutes later, I heard the guest room door close. The apartment became quiet again after that, but not empty, and somehow that felt even harder to survive. Daniel Carter smiled at work today. That was apparently enough to start an office-wide crisis. I realized this around 9:30 in the morning when two employees abruptly stopped talking the second I walked into the break room. One of them nearly dropped her coffee. I narrowed my eyes slightly. What? The woman holding the coffee straightened immediately. Nothing, she said. Her coworker nodded too fast. Absolutely nothing, the other employee added. That usually meant people were absolutely talking about me. Unfortunately, I already knew why. Sam. I looked at him flatly. You're enjoying this way too much, I said. Sam lifted his coffee cup like he had no idea what I was talking about. I have no idea what you mean. You are smiling. His grin only widened. That is because this is the first time anyone here has seen you look remotely human. The woman holding the coffee stared between us carefully. You two know each other? And there it was. The question we both knew would eventually happen. Sam glanced at me first before answering casually. We grew up together. Not technically a lie, but definitely not the full story. Oh, the woman said slowly. That explains things. I frowned slightly. What exactly does that explain? I asked. This time, both employees suddenly became very interested in leaving the room. Sam waited until they disappeared before laughing quietly into his coffee cup. You are terrifying without realizing it. I looked at him over the rim of my mug. I am not terrifying. Sam tilted his head toward the door. Daniel, you walked into a room and two accountants nearly accepted death. That feels dramatic, I said. You inspire drama naturally, Sam replied. I should not have enjoyed talking to him this much. That was becoming a serious problem. The first week at work passed strangely fast after that. Sam adapted to everything almost immediately. Meetings, deadlines, presentations. Even difficult clients somehow ended up liking him within minutes. Watching him work was dangerous in ways I had not prepared for. Because 17-year-old Sam had been warm and funny and reckless. Adult Sam still had all of that. But now he was also competent, confident, capable in a quiet way that kept catching me off guard. Which was exactly why I found myself standing behind his desk Thursday afternoon staring at his proposal draft while trying not to sound impressed. I kept my eyes on the proposal draft. "You fixed the projection issue," I said. Sam looked up from his computer. "You noticed. It was wrong before." Sam smiled dryly. "Thank you for the emotional support." I ignored that and continued reading. "You also reorganized the client timeline. It worked better that way," Sam said. "It does." Sam leaned back slightly in his chair, studying me carefully. "You know, most managers would probably just say, 'Good job.'" I handed the draft back to him. "I hired you." That already implied competence. Sam smiled slowly. "That is the nicest thing you have said to me all week. That is because you keep annoying me. You invited me into your apartment voluntarily. That was temporary generosity." Sam nodded seriously. "Right? Temporary generosity with premium downtown parking." I walked away before he could see the smile I failed to stop. Unfortunately, that only made things worse. Because people noticed. By Friday afternoon, I could already feel the shift around the office. Employees stopped looking nervous every time I walked by. Conversations became easier. Someone even invited me to lunch. That had literally never happened before. Later that evening, Sam and I waited for the elevator together. "You know this is your fault, right?" I muttered. Sam looked innocent immediately. "My fault that your employees finally discovered you are emotionally available?" I gave him a flat look. "I am not emotionally available." The elevator doors opened. An employee from marketing stepped out, saw us together, and smiled. "See you Monday, Daniel." I blinked once after she walked away. Sam looked delighted. "Oh my God." I frowned. "What?" "She used your first name." "That is normal," I said. Sam shook his head, still looking delighted. "No, it is not. They usually talk about you like you are some kind of expensive office cryptid." "I do not think that is true." Sam leaned a little closer. "Daniel, one guy literally called you the ghost of quarterly profits." I stared at him. "You are making that up." Sam lifted one hand like he was swearing an oath. "I absolutely am not." The elevator doors opened into the underground garage. Seattle rain tapped softly against the concrete outside while we walked toward my car together. And somehow, without either of us planning it, this had already become a routine. Waiting for each other after work. Riding home together. Talking about nothing important while secretly noticing everything. Sam slid into the passenger seat while loosening his tie slightly. "You know what the weirdest part is?" I started the engine. "What?" Sam looked over at me. "You laugh more now." "That sounds fake," I said. "It is not." Sam looked out the window for a second before adding quietly, "I think you stopped doing that after you left." Something uncomfortable moved through my chest. Because he was right. For years, my life had been efficient, successful, controlled, but not warm. Never warm. Then Sam walked back into it, and suddenly my apartment had laughter in it again. My car did too. And the worst part was realizing how quickly I had gotten used to hearing it. Living with Sam again was dangerous in the quietest ways possible. Not because we fought. Actually, that was the problem. We fit together too easily. By the second week, my apartment no longer felt completely like mine. Sam's sneakers appeared beside the front door every evening. His coffee mug stayed next to mine in the dishwasher. One of his hoodies ended up on the back of my couch and somehow looked like it belonged there. And somehow I stopped minding. "You know," Sam said, one Saturday morning while standing in my kitchen, "for someone who claims to be emotionally unavailable, you own an alarming amount of cinnamon." I looked up from my laptop. What does that even mean? Sam opened one of my kitchen cabinets like he lived there. It means your apartment smells like a bookstore during fall. That's not an insult, I said. I know, Sam replied. It is honestly comforting. I hated how much that word affected me. Comforting. Because that was exactly what this had become. Every morning, Sam rode to work with me and complained that I drove like a man trying to outrun his taxes. Every evening, we somehow ended up eating dinner together even when neither of us planned it. One night, we burned homemade pizza so badly the smoke alarm nearly destroyed my hearing. That was your fault, I said while opening the windows. Sam stood beneath the screaming smoke alarm with a towel in his hand. You told me to trust the oven. I told you 400 degrees. You said that with confidence. I assumed confidence meant accuracy. I stared at him. You are 28 years old. Sam lifted the towel like a flag of surrender. And yet here we are surviving adversity together. I laughed harder than I meant to. Sam looked ridiculously pleased afterward, like making me laugh was some kind of personal achievement. At work, people noticed too. Employees stopped acting nervous every time I walked by. Conversations became easier. Someone from accounting nearly looked emotional the first time I joined a casual conversation in the break room. One afternoon, I heard two employees talking near the copy room before they realized I was close enough to hear them. Is it just me? One of them whispered. Or does Daniel seem happier lately? He smiled at the quarterly report meeting, the other one said. I thought I was hallucinating. That is not funny, the first employee whispered back. He actually seems easier to talk to now, like he is not living entirely inside spreadsheets anymore. I stopped walking for half a second. Then I kept going, pretending I had heard absolutely nothing. Unfortunately, Sam was standing by the printer with his arms crossed and a look on his face that said he had heard every word. You changed him, one employee whispered to Sam. I pretended not to hear. Sam pretended not to notice me pretending. You say that like he was cursed, Sam replied casually. The employee looked horrified. He absolutely was. I should have been offended. Instead, I kept thinking about the part where someone said I seemed happier. That night, I brought it up while we were grocery shopping together. I am beginning to think my employees dislike me. Sam pushed a shopping cart beside me while examining pasta sauce. They do not dislike you, Sam said. They just did not know what to do with you before. That sounds worse. Sam tossed a jar of pasta sauce into the cart. It is not. I think you forgot how to exist around people for a while. I stopped walking briefly. The fluorescent grocery store lights reflected softly against the polished floor around us while shoppers moved past with carts and children and ordinary little lives. Sam looked at me carefully. Not teasing this time. Just honest. And I think you are starting to remember again. Something in my chest tightened unexpectedly. So I did what I always did when emotions became dangerous. I deflected. You are getting weirdly insightful in the pasta aisle. Sam smiled again, the seriousness easing from his face. I contain multitudes. You contain chaos. He tossed garlic bread into the cart. That too. Later that night, we ended up watching some terrible action movie on the couch. Halfway through it, I realized Sam had fallen asleep beside me. One arm stretched across the cushions, head tilted slightly toward my shoulder. The television light flickered softly across his face while rain tapped against the apartment windows. For a long moment, I just sat there looking at him, at the warmth of him, the familiarity, the quiet. 11 years ago, I lost the person who made loneliness feel survivable. Now he was asleep on my couch wearing one of my hoodies like he had never really left. And the worst part was realizing I was already terrified of losing this again. The problem with kissing someone once and almost kissing him again was that eventually the silence around it started feeling louder than the actual moment. By the third week of living together, the kiss in my office had become something neither of us mentioned and both of us remembered. It only took one ordinary kitchen moment to prove it. Can you hand me the plates? Sam asked one evening while cooking pasta. I opened the cabinet above him. Normally, that would have been simple. Unfortunately, Sam chose that exact moment to turn around. Suddenly, we were standing inches apart. His eyes lifted toward mine automatically. Everything in the kitchen seemed to go quiet. Sam noticed. I knew he noticed because his breathing changed slightly. "You are blocking the cabinet," I said finally. Very intelligent response. Sam blinked once before stepping aside. "Right," he said quietly. "Sorry." For the rest of dinner, both of us acted like absolutely normal people who had not nearly ruined themselves beside a stove 5 minutes earlier. That would have been more convincing if Sam had not accidentally poured water into his own napkin instead of his glass. "You okay over there?" I asked. Sam looked down. "Oh my God." I tried not to laugh. Failed immediately. Sam pointed at me accusingly. "This is your fault somehow. That feels scientifically impossible. You are distracting." The second those words left his mouth, both of us froze. Sam stared at his plate. I stared at him. Then he cleared his throat and grabbed his water correctly this time. "So," he said too quickly, "did you finish reviewing the Chicago account?" Coward. Absolute coward. The worst part was realizing I was not any better. At work, things were not much safer. I was still technically his boss, which meant we had both silently agreed to behave professionally during office hours. No unnecessary attention. No obvious favoritism. No personal conversations around coworkers. Unfortunately, neither of us seemed to understand what normal behavior looked like anymore. Thursday morning, I walked into a meeting room and found Sam already there reviewing presentation notes. Without thinking, I placed a coffee beside him before sitting down. Sam looked up immediately. "So you admit you remembered my order?" "I remembered because you complain every time someone gets it wrong. That still counts." "It does not." Sam smiled down at the coffee cup anyway. Unfortunately, 3 other employees witnessed the interaction. By lunch, the entire office had apparently decided I was secretly capable of kindness. A deeply damaging rumor. That night, we ended up watching television after dinner. Or more accurately, Sam watched television while I attempted to answer emails from the opposite end of the couch. At some point, Sam stretched his legs across the cushions until his sock-covered feet bumped against my thigh. Neither of us moved away immediately. "You know," Sam said softly without looking away from the television, "this is weirdly domestic." I kept staring at my laptop screen. "We are 2 adults sharing an apartment." "Yes, but we also grocery shop together and argue about dish soap." "You buy terrible dish soap," I said. Sam nudged my leg lightly with his foot, still smiling at the television. "You buy emotionally distant dish soap." I finally looked at him. "That sentence means nothing. It means your soap smells like corporate sadness." I stared at him for a second longer than I meant to. "What?" Sam asked quietly. I looked away too fast. "Nothing." A few minutes later, Sam muted the television. The apartment became very quiet. Rain tapped softly against the windows while city lights flickered across the room. "Daniel," Sam said carefully. The tone alone made my chest tighten. "Yeah." Sam hesitated. Actually hesitated. Then he leaned back against the couch again and shook his head slightly. "Nothing." I should have felt relieved. Instead, disappointment settled heavily inside me. Because for 1 second, I thought maybe he was finally going to say it. And I already knew I would have said it back. The new intern arrived on a Monday morning wearing a nervous smile and a tie that was slightly crooked. His name was Ryan. 22. Business major. Recently graduated. The kind of person who apologized to furniture after accidentally bumping into it. Which meant the office immediately adored him. I understood why almost immediately. Ryan was smart, but nervous in a way he tried very hard to hide. He took notes on everything. He asked questions carefully, like he was afraid one wrong sentence would prove he did not belong there. The first time I saw him freeze in front of a spreadsheet during a team meeting, I recognized the look before I understood why. It was not exactly me at 22, but it was close enough. After the meeting, I stopped by his desk. "You were fine," I said. Ryan looked up too quickly. "I was." "You were nervous." I corrected. That is different. He blinked at me like he was not sure whether I had just insulted him or saved his life. From across the office, Sam looked up from his computer. Of course he did. Over the next few days, I found myself checking on Ryan more than I normally would have. Not because he was special. Not because I was trying to make a point. Because every time he looked like he was about to apologize to a printer, I remembered being young, terrified, and convinced everyone else had been given a manual I never received. You are being weirdly nice, Sam informed me quietly one afternoon after Ryan left my office with a folder of notes. I looked up from my laptop. That feels dramatic. You personally reviewed his draft twice. He needed help. You walked him through the client template. He asked. You smiled at him. I paused. I smile sometimes. Sam gave me a flat look. Daniel. Fair. The strange part was that Ryan seemed to relax around me faster than anyone else in the office ever had. By Wednesday, he no longer looked like he expected me to fire him for using the wrong font. By Thursday, he had started asking better questions. By Friday, he knocked lightly on my office door right before lunch, holding his laptop against his chest like a shield. Hey, Ryan said carefully. I just wanted to say thank you for helping me this week. I nodded once. You are doing the work. I am just making sure you stop apologizing to Excel. Ryan laughed, surprised. Then he glanced toward the hallway. Sam and a few people are going to lunch. I was wondering if you wanted to come too. I almost said no automatically. Lunch with employees was still a concept I had, not fully accepted as real. But Ryan looked hopeful, and Sam happened to be standing near the elevator, watching us with an expression I could not read. So I said, sure. Ryan looked genuinely pleased. Sam looked less pleased. Interesting. Lunch should have been normal. It was just a sandwich place near the office. Nothing dramatic. Nothing intimate. Ryan asked too many questions about client strategy, and I answered because apparently I had become someone who mentored interns now. Sam sat across from me, unusually quiet. First, I thought he was tired. Then Ryan laughed at something I said, and Sam looked down at his drink like the straw had personally betrayed him. That was new. I glanced at Sam more carefully. His jaw was relaxed, but not completely. His smile was polite, but not warm. And every time Ryan asked me another question, Sam became just a little quieter. I should not have found that amusing. I really should not have. But after 11 years of wondering whether I had imagined everything between us, seeing Sam care even a little made something dangerous and pleased unfold in my chest. After lunch, Ryan asked if I could look over one more client outline before the end of the day. I said yes, mostly because he needed the help. Only mostly. Across the office, Sam looked up again. This time I noticed, and unfortunately so did he. At the apartment, things became quieter than usual. Sam changed into sweatpants, opened cabinets with unnecessary force, and answered every question like he was being interviewed against his will. Do you want pasta or rice? He asked. Either is fine. Helpful. I am trying my best. That is concerning. I leaned against the kitchen counter, watching him move around the apartment with barely contained irritation. You know, I said carefully, Ryan did well today. Sam froze for half a second before continuing to cut vegetables. Good for Ryan. He learns quickly. That must be exciting for him. I tilted my head slightly. For him. Sam set the knife down a little harder than necessary. For everyone involved. I looked at him slowly. Finally. Oh, I said. Sam looked over. What? I tried not to smile. Failed a little. That bothered you. Sam immediately looked away. No, terrible liar. I leaned back slightly against the counter. Interesting. Stop doing that. Doing what? That thing where you sound amused. I am not amused. You absolutely are. He was right. I absolutely was. Not because I wanted to hurt him. Not because Ryan meant anything. Because Sam was jealous. Sam. The same Sam who had spent weeks acting like the kiss in my office was something we could both survive by ignoring it. And now he was standing in my kitchen, angry at a 22-year-old intern for asking me about client strategy. The realization should not have made me feel warm, but it did. You know, I said carefully, Ryan reminds me of myself a little. Sam looked back at me. What does that mean? He is nervous, trying too hard, afraid everyone knows something he does not. Sam's expression shifted slightly. The jealousy did not disappear, but something softer moved underneath it. That is why you have been helping him? He asked. At first, I admitted. Sam narrowed his eyes. At first, I looked down briefly, because there it was. The part one did not want to say. At first, I just wanted to help him, I said. Then I noticed you were bothered. Sam stared at me. And I might not have stopped as quickly as I should have. The kitchen went completely silent. Rain tapped against the windows. The kitchen light glowed warmly across the countertops between us. Sam stared at me for a long second. So you noticed I was jealous? Sam said quietly. I swallowed once. Yes. And you said nothing. I did not know what to say. Sam gave me a look. That has never stopped you before. Fair point. I was not trying to make you jealous, I said quietly. Not at first. Sam watched me carefully. At first, I wanted to help Ryan, I said. That part was real. I saw how nervous he was, and I knew what that felt like. Sam's expression shifted slightly. The jealousy did not disappear completely, but something softer moved underneath it. That is why you were helping him? Yes. And after you realized it bothered me? I let out a slow breath. After that, I should have been more careful. Sam stared at me. That is not an answer. No, I admitted. It is not. The kitchen went quiet again. Rain tapped against the apartment windows behind him. I looked at him, and this time I did not hide behind the joke. After I realized it bothered you, I said quietly, part of me did not hate knowing you cared. Sam looked away for a second, like he needed somewhere to put that. When he looked back at me, the irritation was still there. But underneath it was something more honest. You are impossible, he said. I know. No, his voice softened. You really do not understand what you do to people, do you? That sounds dramatic again. I am serious, Daniel. Something in my chest tightened. The apartment suddenly felt very small. You spent weeks acting like nothing happened after that kiss in your office, Sam continued. Meanwhile, I have been losing my mind every single time you stood too close to me. I looked down briefly, because hearing him say it out loud felt painfully good. You could have said something, I admitted quietly. Sam laughed once in disbelief. Oh, really? Because historically, we are both excellent at communication. Fair point. You left me alone with my feelings for 11 years, he added. I left. You know what I mean. I did. And somehow, standing there in my kitchen with rain outside and half-finished dinner on the stove, we suddenly felt 17 again. Not literally, but emotionally. Two people standing too close to something honest. This time, though, neither of us looked away first. I swallowed once. Then here is the embarrassing part, I said quietly. Sam watched me carefully. What? I helped him for the right reason, I said. But I let myself enjoy your reaction for the wrong one, because I was too scared to ask for the truth directly. Sam stayed very still. So instead of talking to me, you let me suffer through spreadsheet jealousy? I winced. That sounds worse when you say it out loud. It is worse. Fair. For a second, neither of us said anything. Then Sam let out a quiet breath, almost a laugh. You are unbelievable. I have heard that several times. Because it keeps being true. The warmth in his voice nearly ruined me. Because underneath the frustration and jealousy and sarcasm, there was affection. Real affection. The kind I had spent 11 years pretending not to miss. I looked at him, and this time I did not hide behind the joke. You still care. The laughter disappeared from his expression immediately. The silence that followed felt entirely different now. No pretending. No avoidance. Just truth sitting openly between us for the first time. Sam looked at me carefully. I never stopped caring. The words hit harder than I was prepared for, because some part of me had still been afraid. Afraid that maybe I had loved him more, missed him more, waited longer, but the look on Sam's face made that fear feel small. "I loved you back then," he said softly. "I still do." For a second, I could not move. I had imagined him saying something like that for 11 years. Hearing it out loud was different. It made the whole room feel too small. Sam looked nervous immediately afterward, like he regretted saying it out loud, which honestly felt unfair, because my chest hurt in a way I did not know how to hide. "Daniel," he said carefully. I crossed the space between us before he could panic himself into taking it back. Sam barely had time to inhale before I kissed him. This time there was no interruption, no office door, no fear, just warmth, relief, and 11 years of things we had never said finally having somewhere to go. Sam made a quiet sound against my mouth before pulling me closer automatically. And that was enough to make me hold on tighter. Because even after everything, even after all the lost time and distance and silence, loving him still felt instinctive, natural, like my heart had never actually learned how to do anything else. When we finally pulled apart, neither of us moved far. Sam rested his forehead lightly against mine while both of us tried to breathe normally again. "Well," he murmured softly. "That was slightly more effective than yelling at you about spreadsheets." I laughed quietly against him. "You are impossible. You already knew that." His hands were still resting loosely against my waist. Mine were still holding onto the front of his shirt. Outside, Seattle rain continued falling softly against the windows, while the city lights flickered gold across the apartment around us. And for the first time since Sam walked back into my life, neither of us was pretending anymore. Later that night, we stayed together on the couch long after the television stopped playing, talking, laughing quietly, touching each other carefully like we were both still trying to believe this was real. And sometime after midnight, Sam fell asleep beside me with his head resting against my shoulder. This time, when I looked at him, fear was still there. But it was no longer the strongest thing I felt. Not anymore. Before anything became public at work, Sam and I handled the practical part quietly. His reporting line was moved under another director, and after that, no one could say his place there depended on me. After that, the office reacted to my relationship with Sam exactly the same way they reacted to everything else involving me. With confusion. "Wait," someone from accounting whispered one morning near the coffee machine. "You mean they were already in love this entire time?" Another employee nodded immediately. "Oh, absolutely," she said. "We just thought Daniel was emotionally unavailable." "I heard that," I said flatly while pouring coffee. "No, you did not," she replied without even looking ashamed. Sam nearly walked into the counter trying not to laugh. That became normal surprisingly fast. Not a secret anymore. Not pretending anymore. Just us. Somehow the world did not end because I loved him openly. If anything, life became easier. Lighter. Sam still rode to work with me every morning. We still grocery shopped together. We still argued about thermostat settings like an elderly married couple trapped inside a luxury apartment. The only difference now was that Sam kissed me goodbye before leaving the kitchen. And apparently I smiled constantly now, which the office found deeply disturbing. "You are literally glowing," Ryan informed me one afternoon. I looked up from my laptop. "That sounds medically concerning." "No," he said seriously. "You are happy. It is weird." Sam walked past my office at that exact moment and smirked without even pretending to hide it. Traitor. The strange thing was how naturally we settled into each other once we finally stopped denying what had always been there. There was no dramatic adjustment period. No awkwardness. Just relief. Like we had both spent 11 years carrying something heavy and finally set it down together. Sometimes I came home late from work and found Sam asleep on the couch waiting for me anyway. Sometimes he stole my hoodies and denied it while actively wearing them. Sometimes I woke up in the middle of the night and realized he had unconsciously moved closer in his sleep. Every single time, warmth hit my chest so hard it almost hurt. Because for years I had convinced myself losing him was something I survived. Now I realized surviving and living were completely different things. By the time December arrived quietly in Seattle, Sam and I had been together for several months. Rain, cold air, Christmas lights reflecting across wet streets downtown. And somehow, after years of avoiding the past, I found myself sitting in the passenger seat of Sam's car while he drove us back to the house where everything had started. His parents' house, the Whitaker's house, the place that had taken me in when I was 17 and life had nowhere else to put me. I tried not to look nervous. Unfortunately, Sam knew me too well. "You are doing that thing again," he said while turning onto the familiar street. I looked over at him. "What thing?" "The thing where your face pretends to be calm but your entire soul is preparing for a tax audit." That sentence was very specific. "You make fear look organized," Sam said. I looked out the window before he could see the smile trying to happen. The neighborhood looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I had just spent too many years making the past feel larger than it was. The same maple tree still stood near the driveway. The porch light was still warm. The kitchen window still glowed the way it used to when Sam's mother stayed up late pretending she was not waiting for us to come home. My chest tightened before the car even stopped. Sam parked in the driveway, then reached over and covered my hand with his. "Hey," he said softly. I looked at him. His smile was gentle, but his eyes understood too much. "They missed you," he said. I swallowed once. I missed them too. The front door opened before we even made it halfway up the porch steps. Sam's mother stepped outside with both hands over her mouth. For 1 second, she just stared at me. Then she started crying. "Oh, Daniel," she whispered. And suddenly I was 17 again, standing on that porch with nowhere to go, trying very hard not to look like someone who needed saving. This time I did not have to pretend as hard. She pulled me into her arms before I could say anything. I stood there stiffly for half a second. Then I hugged her back. "I'm sorry," I said quietly, though I was not completely sure what I was apologizing for leaving, for disappearing, for letting 11 years pass, for being loved by this family and not knowing what to do with it. Sam's mother only held me tighter. "You're home," she said. That was unfair. Completely unfair. Because my eyes burned immediately. Behind her, Sam's father stood in the doorway with his arms crossed and a suspicious shine in his eyes. "Well," he said gruffly, "look who finally remembered where we live." I laughed before I could stop myself. Sam looked at his father. "Dad." "What?" his father said. "I am being emotionally welcoming." Sam's mother pulled back just enough to wipe her eyes. "You are terrible at it." "I retired," he said. "My social skills went with my job." And just like that, the heaviness cracked open. Dinner felt like stepping into a memory and finding out it had kept a chair open for me. The kitchen smelled like roasted chicken, garlic, and the same cinnamon candle Sam's mother used to light every December. The magnets were still on the fridge. The old wooden table still had the tiny scratch near the corner from when Sam had dropped a screwdriver on it at 16 and denied it for 3 days. "You still blame me for that?" Sam asked when I pointed it out. "You were holding the screwdriver," his mother said. "That proves nothing." His father looked at me across the table. "He still argues like a lawyer with no evidence." "He has gotten worse," I said. Sam turned to me in betrayal. "You are supposed to be on my side." "I am on the side of truth." His mother looked between us and smiled so softly it almost hurt. For most of dinner, they asked gentle questions. About Seattle. About work. About the apartment. About us. Not in a demanding way. Just carefully, like they were grateful for every answer but afraid to ask too much. At one point, Sam's father looked down at his plate and cleared his throat. "I always wondered if we should have looked for you harder," he said quietly. The table went still. Sam looked at him. His mother stopped moving completely. I felt something in my chest fold in on itself. "You did enough," I said after a moment. His father looked up. "No," he said. "We did what we knew how to do. That is not always the same thing." I did not know how to answer that. So Sam reached under the table and found my hand. His fingers slipped between mine, warm and steady, and somehow that helped me breathe. I was scared, I admitted quietly. After I left, I thought if I came back here, I would remember too much. Sam's mother's eyes filled again. You were allowed to remember, sweetheart. That nearly broke me. Sam squeezed my hand once. I looked down at our joined hands and tried to keep my voice steady. I know that now. After dinner, we helped clear the table, though Sam's mother complained that guests were not supposed to wash dishes. Sam told her Daniel Carter did not know how to stand in a kitchen without organizing something. She said that sounded accurate. His father said I could organize the garage next if I felt emotionally called to suffer. For the first time in years, I laughed in that house without feeling like I had stolen something. Later, when the dishes were done and the evening had gone soft around the edges, Sam nodded toward the hallway. Come with me, he said quietly. I followed him past the old family photos on the wall, past the bathroom with the squeaky door, past the linen closet where Sam used to hide Christmas presents badly and insist no one knew. Then we stopped in front of the room at the end of the hall. My breath caught before he opened the door. The bedroom, our old bedroom, the room we had shared when we were 17. Sam pushed the door open slowly. For a second, neither of us stepped inside. The room was different now, but not completely. The walls had been repainted. The old posters were gone. The bed was newer. The desk had been moved beneath the window, but the shape of it was the same. The window facing the backyard. The corner where Sam used to drop his backpack. The small space between the bed and the wall where I used to sit at night when I could not sleep. I stepped inside carefully, like the room might remember me. Sam followed behind me and closed the door softly. For a while, neither of us spoke. I looked around the room, and the years folded over each other. 17-year-old Sam laughing too loudly because he was trying to cheer me up. 17-year-old me pretending I did not notice how safe I felt when he was close. The two of us whispering after midnight, sharing secrets, sharing silence, losing each other before we ever really understood what we were. I thought this would hurt more, I said quietly. Sam stood beside me. Does it? I shook my head slowly. It hurts, but not the same way. He looked at me. I kept my eyes on the window. I think it feels like saying goodbye to something I never got to finish. Sam was quiet for a moment. Then he said, maybe we are not saying goodbye. I turned toward him. His expression was different. Soft, nervous, too careful. The same look he had when he was about to say something that mattered. Daniel. The way Sam said my name changed the air in the room. My heartbeat changed immediately. What? Sam reached into his coat pocket, then stopped, then laughed once under his breath, nervous and almost embarrassed. I had a whole plan. I stared at him. A plan? Yeah. He looked around the room, his smile shaking slightly. I was going to wait until tomorrow morning. Maybe take you to the lake. Say something romantic. Pretend I am emotionally prepared. My chest tightened. Sam. But then we walked back into this room, he continued softly, and I realized this is where I should have been brave the first time. Everything inside me went still. Sam took one step closer. When we were 17, this room was the first place where I understood what home could feel like, he said. Not because of the walls. Not because of the bed or the window or any of this. His eyes held mine. Because you were here. My throat tightened so painfully I could barely breathe. Sam reached into his pocket again. This time he did not stop. When he opened the small velvet box in his hand, the room blurred around the edges. The old bedroom, the soft lamplight, the boy I had loved at 17 standing in front of me as the man I loved now. You once told me home was never really a place, Sam said softly. It was just the person who made you feel safe enough to stay. My eyes burned. Sam smiled through his own nerves. You have been my home since I was 17, he whispered. So stay with me for the rest of it? For a second I could not speak. Not because I was unsure. Because the answer was so obvious it felt bigger than words. I looked at him, at the nervous smile, at the hands that were not quite steady. At the person I had spent 11 years trying to survive without. Then I laughed once, breathless and broken. Obviously, yes. Sam's face changed immediately. Relief, joy, a kind of happiness so open it almost hurt to look at. He barely had time to stand before I pulled him into a kiss. This time there was no office door, no fear, no silence stretching across 11 years. Just Sam, just me, just the room that had once held everything we were too young to say. When we finally pulled apart, Sam rested his forehead against mine. "You said yes very aggressively," he murmured. "You proposed in our old bedroom," I whispered back. "That was emotional violence." Sam laughed softly, and I felt it against me. From somewhere down the hall, his mother's voice called out, "Everything okay in there?" Sam closed his eyes. "Oh no." His father's voice followed immediately. "If he said no, we still like him better." I laughed so hard I had to hide my face against Sam's shoulder. Sam groaned. "I cannot believe they are part of this moment. They were always part of it," I said softly. That made him go quiet. Then he looked at me, and his smile turned gentle again. "Yeah," he whispered. "They were." A few seconds later, there was a soft knock on the bedroom door before it opened. Sam's mother saw the ring first. Then she screamed. Then she cried. Then she hugged both of us at the same time with enough force to end the conversation permanently. Sam's father stood behind her, pretending not to cry. "Badly." "Well," he said, clearing his throat. "About time." Sam looked at him. "You knew." His father gave him a flat look. "Son, you have been looking at Daniel like that since high school. We all knew." Sam's mother nodded while wiping her eyes. "We were just waiting for both of you to catch up." I looked at Sam. Sam looked at me, and somehow the years did not feel wasted in that moment. Not completely. They had hurt. They had changed us. They had taken things we could never get back. But they had also brought us here. Back to this room. Back to this family. Back to each other. Later that night, after his parents finally stopped crying enough to let us breathe, Sam and I stood alone in the bedroom again. The ring sat on my finger, unfamiliar and perfect. Outside the window, December rain tapped softly against the glass. I looked around the room one last time. Years ago, we were two lonely boys sharing a room because life had nowhere else to put us. Now we were standing in that same room again, older, braver, and finally honest. Still roommates, just finally brave enough to call it love.